have probably walked past a bottle bank or dropped an empty bottle into a recycling bin and assumed vaguely that the glass would be melted down and turned into something else. That's roughly true, but the something else is more specific and more surprising than most people expect. That bottle isn't turned into something different, it's turned back into itself. Not a lower grade version of itself. Not glass that's been weakened or altered by the recycling process. The same material with the same clarity and the same strength, reformed into a new container and ready to be recycled again immediately after that. Most materials degrade when they're reprocessed. Glass simply does not. And the reason why, hidden inside the molecular structure of something that starts as ordinary sand, is what makes glass recycling one of the more unusual stories in modern manufacturing. Let's get into it, right here on Small Things. The material that refuses to change. At its core, glass is silicon dioxide, fused with soda ash and limestone at extremely high temperatures. At the molecular level, glass is amorphous, its atoms arranged in no repeating pattern, frozen mid-flow from the last time it was molten. That disordered structure is exactly why glass can be remelted and reformed without changing. There's no crystalline order to disrupt, no polymer chain to break. When you heat glass above its working temperature, the atoms begin to move again, and when it cools, they freeze in whatever shape they were given. The same silicon dioxide atoms that formed the original bottle will still be there in the new one. They don't degrade, they just wait to be given a different shape. Before the recycling machine, there was a deposit. It didn't begin with optical sorting machines or industrial furnaces. It began with a very simple economic idea. The bottle is worth something after it's empty. Long before mechanical recycling existed, glass bottles were returned, cleaned, and refilled. The first returnable bottle systems appeared in the 19th century when breweries and dairies began charging customers a small deposit on glass containers. The deposit was refunded when the bottle came back. Because glass was strong enough to be washed and reused many times, and because the manufacturing cost of a new bottle was significant, reuse made straightforward economic sense for everyone involved. The customer had an incentive, the producer had an incentive, the bottle came back. For most of the 20th century, this was the system. Bottles went out full, came back empty, were cleaned and sterilized, filled again, and sent out once more. In many countries, this cycle repeated dozens of times before a bottle was retired from service. The shift to single-use glass, and later the rise of plastic and aluminum, changed the economics. New glass became cheap enough that collecting and cleaning old bottles stopped making financial sense for many producers. Deposit systems were abandoned across large parts of the world, particularly in North America. Glass ended up in landfill, where a single bottle will remain essentially intact for over 1 million years, doing nothing and going nowhere. The material that had spent a century being reused was now being buried. The response was industrial glass recycling, not reuse but remelting. Instead of cleaning and refilling the same bottle, the new system would crush glass back into its constituent material and remelt it into entirely new ones. Germany and the Netherlands led the way in rebuilding the collection incentive with reverse vending machines. Insert a bottle, receive a small payment. Those machines now process hundreds of millions of bottles annually, providing recycling plants with glass that arrives pre-sorted by color and largely free of contamination. The bottle returned to a machine reaches the factory already organized, already useful, costing almost nothing extra to process. The basic economic logic has not changed since the 19th century brewery. The bottle is still worth something after it's empty. What changed is what the industry does with it when it comes back and how much of the system is set up to make sure it comes back at all. From broken shards to new bottles. So what actually happens inside a glass recycling plant? The journey begins with destruction. Glass arrives in bins, thousands of bottles per truckload, tumbling down in a cascade of green, brown, and clear. The first job is removing everything that's not glass. Workers pull out paper and plastic by hand. Magnetic separators drag out metal bottle caps. Vibrating screens shake away dust and grit. What remains goes into a hammer mill, rotating hammers that smash the glass into small fragments. The result is cullet. Fine, sparkling particles that look almost like coarse sand. Cullet has a lower melting temperature than raw materials, which means it costs less energy to process. Every 10% increase in cullet content reduces the energy needed by roughly 3%. The economics of recycling and the physics of glass point in the same direction. After crushing, the cullet cascades through an optical sorting system. Laser sensors scan every fragment in real time, identifying color and composition. The moment a brown piece appears in the clear stream, a targeted puff of air shoots it into a separate channel. Tens of thousands of decisions made every minute, each one invisible, each one necessary. Color separation matters because even a small amount of the wrong glass in a furnace batch can ruin the entire melt. The sorted cullet is blended with fresh silica sand, soda ash, and limestone, then fed into a furnace at around 1250 degrees Celsius, hotter than volcanic lava. It dissolves into a glowing viscous liquid. After many hours in that molten state, the glass is fed to forming machines, cut into precise portions called gobs, and each gob is blown into a mold by a burst of compressed air. In a fraction of a second, the new bottle exists. It comes out glowing red, travels through a slow annealing oven where internal stress is gradually released, then passes under high-speed cameras checking for cracks, bubbles, and dimensional errors. Any bottle that fails is returned to cullet and the process begins again, the same atoms ready to try once more. The real reason glass gets wasted. Most people assume that glass which ends up in landfills is there because recycling glass is difficult or expensive. The difficulty isn't in the recycling, it's in the collecting. Glass that arrives at a recycling plant in clean, color-sorted loads, the kind delivered by deposit return schemes, costs almost nothing extra to process. The cullet is high quality, the contamination is minimal, the energy savings are real. Glass that arrives mixed with general household waste is a different problem entirely. It arrives broken, contaminated with food residue, mixed with ceramics and porcelain that look similar to glass but behave very differently in a furnace. Ceramics and porcelain have higher melting points than glass. They don't dissolve in the melt. They create hard inclusions in the finished product that can cause the new bottles to fracture. A single ceramic shard in the wrong batch can compromise an entire furnace load. This is why Germany's 90% recycling rate and America's 30% rate are not primarily a difference in technology or infrastructure. They're a difference in collection. Germany has deposit return systems that pre-sort the glass before it leaves the consumer's hands. The United States mostly relies on mixed stream curb collection, which delivers dirtier, more contaminated material that's harder and more expensive to process into something usable. The glass is ready to be recycled. It's always been ready. The system around it determines whether that potential is realized or buried. The bottle that outlives everything. Today, you'll find recycled glass on almost every supermarket shelf, though you would never be able to identify it. That's the point worth sitting with. A bottle made from 80% recycled cullet is indistinguishable in clarity, strength, and quality from one made entirely from virgin raw materials. The recycling process doesn't degrade glass, it doesn't introduce impurities, it doesn't change the material in any meaningful way. This separates glass from almost every other recycled material in common use. Recycled plastic must often be downcycled into lower grade products, eventually reaching a point where no further recycling is possible. Recycled paper loses fiber length with each cycle, gradually weakening it until it only becomes cardboard or tissue. Glass simply returns to itself, cycle after cycle, with nothing lost along the way. The bottle that was a wine bottle this year can be a wine bottle next year, or in 20 years, the material unchanged. The infrastructure to make that happen at full scale is still not universal. But where deposit return systems exist and collection rates are high, glass moves through the loop with a consistency and quality that no other packaging material matches. Germany, and the Netherlands demonstrate what the ceiling looks like. Recycling rates above 90% achieved not through better chemistry, but through better collection. The bottle sitting on your table right now is ready to begin again the moment it's empty. Whether it does depends entirely on where it ends up next. A loop, not a line. So what really happens to a glass bottle after it's thrown away? In the right system, it comes back as itself. Crushed into cullet, sorted by laser, melted back into liquid, blown into a new shape, inspected, filled, and returned to a shelf. The silicon dioxide atoms that formed the original bottle are still there in the new one, unchanged, undiminished, waiting to be shaped again. A glass bottle does not truly disappear when we throw it away. In the right system, it can be broken, melted, reshaped, and reborn again and again. The same atoms indefinitely, not a line from production to landfill, a loop. The only thing that interrupts it is where we choose to put the empty bottle when we're done with it. If this changed the way you think about the glass bottle you finished this morning, let us know in the comments what you want us to explore next. We might make it our next episode. Thanks for watching. History often hides in the smallest details.